Welcome everybody to Forza Horizon 4, and today we're taking a look at the 2014 Maserati Ghibli SQ4. Now this has been in production since 2013 and marks Maserati's comeback in the mid-sized luxury car segment after nearly 2 decades of absence. And it shares the same architecture as the 6th gen Quattroporte, but has a shorter wheelbase and is shorter overall in length. And this being the S model, it's the most powerful and sportiest version of the Ghibli. Because it's a Q4 edition, it's also got all-wheel drive to help keep that power and sportiness in check. And but nonetheless, even the standard version is still pretty sporty with its suspension, which is double wishbone at the front and 5-link multi-link at the rear. All versions come with an 8-speed automatic gearbox and a rear limited slip differential. Though, like I said, the S models being sportier come with bigger brakes. Now, the engine is easily my favourite part of this vehicle, just like the previous two Ghiblis in their incarnations, because we had a Ghibli in the 90s that had a really good V6, and then a Ghibli from the late 60s, early 70s that had a really big V8. So, once again, the engine is the best part of the Maserati Ghibli, and it's a 3-litre twin-turbocharged V6 engine, producing 404 horsepower and 405 pounds-feet of torque, which is fairly decent. Now, the latest Ghibli that came out in 2018 has 20 extra horsepower and 22 extra pounds-feet of torque, so yeah, you're going to get a little bit more power than this version, but that's still a decent amount for a mid-sized luxury car. It's not a full-on big, saloon car like the Quattroporte or the likes of the M5 or anything like that. So for a mid-sized car, it's fairly decent, and that's despite the fact that it weighs quite a fair bit for a mid-sized car at 4,123 pounds, which is a little bit of a shame. I would have preferred them to have gone down the Alfa Romeo route of having the lightest car possible, because their Saloon, the Quadrifoglio, whatever it's called, the Saloon I'm on about, but even that weighs around 400 pounds less than this, while having a lot more power and a fair decent amount of torque as well. So yeah, it is a shame that it does weigh as much as it does, but nonetheless I still like the engine a lot, despite the power that it has going for it when it's dealing with the amount of weight that it has. I really do quite like the looks, especially from the front and the side. The back is a little bit less successful, but it's still fairly decent, and I do like the fact it's got quad exhausts. And interior wise, it's also fairly good, fairly well equipped, plenty of room, though it doesn't look quite as Italian as I would have liked, not got quite as much flair as I would have liked. It's a bit bland, but then again, I'm sure there might well be better colour designs for the interior, and it's got a fairly decent boot as well. So saloon wise, in terms of practicality, it's fairly competitive, but because it is a Maserati, it's got that little bit of extra charisma in terms of the looks, in terms of the engine. It's not your bog standard kind of saloon, which is fairly boring. It's a little bit more stylish than that, and the engine is easily the most charismatic thing about it. So to see how charismatic, we're going to get out onto the open road and see just what it can do. So yeah, thanks to that weight, it's not the fastest of vehicles, to say the least, but because the engine does sound really rather nice, it's easily one of my favourite sounding V6 engines, as you can hear. It kind of makes up for it really, and with that all-wheel drive system and that really good suspension, it's able to keep that power in check, as well as handle whatever you throw at it, no matter what speed you're going at. So it's a fairly good handling vehicle. It's able to control that weight that it has reasonably well. Doesn't feel like it's rolling around a lot, and doesn't feel like it's pitching and rolling when you're coming out of a corner either. So fairly well controlled with all that weight, and that all-wheel drive system certainly is a big part of that. Sure, you can get it in a rear-wheel drive version, I'm pretty sure, but yeah, I'd prefer the all-wheel drive version over that, purely because it means that you can not only deal with the power, but you can also deal with the weight at the same time. Now, acceleration wise, like I said, it's not the best because of the weight, but it's still reasonably good, especially the 0 to 60 time of 4.7 seconds, and the 0 to 100 time of 12 seconds isn't half bad, and it was at least going to a top speed of 184 miles an hour, which is fairly impressive for a car that barely has 400 horsepower. Now, granted, the latest Ghibli SQ4 will have more power, like I said earlier, than this. So if it's weighing in at the same kind of overall weight as this vehicle, then yeah, you're going to have an even faster car in your hands, because 20 extra horsepower and 22 extra pounds-feet of torque is fairly decent in terms of an increase. Certainly not so much that you're going to have to worry about the vehicle not being able to deal with all that extra power, on top of a fairly decent amount of power that it already has. So yeah, it's easily one of my more favourite cars in the mid-size saloon class, especially on this game. And yeah, it's a car that has grown in my appreciation of it. When I first saw it, I didn't really much care for it, because I was far too busy comparing it to the Quattroporte, which I really shouldn't have been doing, because that is a full-size luxury saloon which has, you know, a much bigger engine, much more power. So yeah, it was fairly unreasonable in me to compare it to the Quattroporte. But when you compare it to, you know, other mid-size class cars in the saloon class, like the Jaguar, oh, what's it called now? It's not the X-Type, it's the new one that they've brought out. Actually, we'll take a quick look at those cars actually, and we'll see what it's going up against, and you can see what I'm on about when it comes to certain cars. So yeah, it is in this super saloon, so we'll look at the cars in there. So yeah, not going to compare it to like the Panamera or the Geely Quadrifoglio, which I mentioned earlier, which as you can see does have a lot less weight but also more power and more torque, because they are a fair bit more expensive than this. But you know, other mid-sized saloons like, you know, your such as the Jaguar XES, for instance, which as you can see has, granted, a lot less in the way of weight, but it also has a lot less in terms of power. You've got 64 less horsepower there, as well as, you know, around 73 less pounds-feet of torque, which is a fairly sizable amount. And yeah, 6 acceleration on that one, whereas the Maserati has 7.2. So yeah, granted that Jaguar also has quite a small capacity V6, though that's opted for supercharging over turbocharging like this vehicle. So yeah, it's got that licked fairly well, and it's got the Kia Stinger licked in terms of power as well. Again, though, that car is lighter, but again, not as quick in terms of acceleration, because it does have a fair decent less amount of power and a fair decent amount less in torque as well. Also better than, you know, you see the Volvo. I know I haven't got the saloon version on this game, but the V60 is essentially the same thing as the saloon version. So yeah, as you can see, a lot less power and torque in that one, and yeah, not that much less in the way of weight either. So yeah, in terms of mid-size saloons, it's, you know, fairly up there in terms of the best of the bunch, to be honest. And that engine alone, because it just absolutely sings, as well as those front end looks, do really give it that little bit of a advantage over other vehicles. Because yeah, the likes of the Volvo and the Jaguar do look good, but I do prefer the front end to this. And yeah, the engine alone is better than the engines in both of those vehicles, not just for the extra power and torque, but also just because of the engine up, which I really do like. And because it has the all-wheel drive system, unlike the Jaguar, it's a little bit more controllable. You can really throw it into a corner and be mostly confident that it's going to do okay. So yeah, overall a really good vehicle, and it was recently put into the game by the previous by the festival playlist in the previous season. So if you haven't obviously completed that season to 50%, then you wouldn't have got this vehicle. But yeah, I do like the fact that it's available now in the game in some degree, but I would like more Maseratis in a Forza game like this, or a future Forza game, because there are plenty out there that we have yet to experience. I'm sorry that we are in the dark, but you know, can't help the ever-changing day cycle. So yeah, I do like the fact that this is in the game. I know it's not a new car to the Forza series, but I do like it's in this game now. But again, I would like more Maseratis in Forza games, because we've not had all that many different Maseratis in Forza games before. And of course, we've still yet to have the Maserati Quattroporte, which hasn't been in Forza games, I think since Forza Motorsport 4. So yeah, would like that car back, because that is easily one of my favourite sports saloons. But as far as sports saloons go, especially in the more mid-tier range, this is easily one of the best. And yeah, highly recommend trying it out if you haven't already. Nonetheless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.